Chapter 25. I Strike the Jolly Rodger. I had scarce gained a position on the bowsprit when the flying jib flapped and filled upon the other tack with a report like a gun. The schooner trembled to her keel under the reverse, but the next moment the other sails, still drawing, the jib flapped back again and hung idle. This had nearly tossed me off into the sea. I now lost no time, crawled back along the bowsprit, and tumbled head foremost on the deck. I was on the lee side of the forecastle, and the mainsail, which was still drawing, concealed from me a certain portion of the afterdeck. Not a soul was to be seen. The planks, which had not been swabbed since the mutiny, bore the print of many feet, and an empty bottle, broken by the neck, tumbled to and fro like a live thing in the scuppers. Suddenly the Hispaniola came right into the wind. The jibs cracked behind me and cracked loud. The rudder slammed to, the whole ship gave a sickening heave and shudder, and at that same moment the main boom swung inward, and the sheet groaned in the blocks, and showed me the lee afterdeck. There were two watchmen, sure enough, Redcap on his back, stiff as a handspike, with his arms outstretched like those of a crucifix, his teeth showing through open lips. Israel Hands propped against the bulwark, his chin on his chest, his hands lying open before him on the deck, his face white under its tan as a tallow candle. For a while the ship kept bucking and sidling like a vicious horse, the sails filling now on one tack, now on another, and the boom swinging to and fro till the mast groaned aloud under the strain. Now and again, too, there would come a cloud of light sprays over the bulwark, and a heavy blow of the ship's bows against the swell. So much heavier weather was made of it by this great-rigged ship than by my small home-made lopsided coracle, now gone to the bottom of the sea. At every jump of the schooner, Redcap slipped to and fro, but what was ghastly to behold, neither his attitude nor his fixed teeth-disclosing grin was any way disturbed by this rough usage. At every jump, too, Hands appeared still more to sink into himself and settle down upon the deck, his feet sliding ever farther out, and the whole body canting toward the stern, so that his face became, a little by little, hid from me, and at last I could see nothing beyond his ear and the frayed ringlet of one whisker. At the same time I observed around both of them splashes of dark blood upon the planks, and began to feel sure that they had killed each other in their drunken wrath. While I was thus looking and wondering, in a calm moment when the ship was still, Israel Hands turned partly around with a low moan, writhed himself back to the position in which I had seen him first. The moan, which told of pain and deadly weakness, was the way in which his jaw hung open and went right to my heart. But when I remembered the talk I had overheard from the apple barrel, all pity left me. I walked aft until I reached the mainmast. "Come aboard, Mr. Hands," I said ironically. He rolled his eyes round heavily, but he was too far gone to express surprise. All he could do was utter one word, "brandy." It occurred to me that there was no time to lose, and dodging the boom as it once more lurched across the deck, I slipped aft and down the companion stairs into the cabin. It was such a sense of confusion as you can hardly fancy. All the locked fast places had been broken up in quest of the chart. The floor was thick with mud where the ruffians sat down to drink or consult after waiting in the marshes round their camp. The bulkheads, all painted in clear white and beaded round with gilt, bore a pattern of dirty hands. Dozens of empty bottles clinked together in corners to the rolling of the ship. One of the doctor's medical books lay open on the table, half of the leaves gutted out, I suppose for pipe lights. In the midst of all of this, the lamp still cast a smoky glow, obscure and brown as umber. I went into the cellar. All the barrels were gone, and all the bottles, of most surprising number, had been drunk out and thrown away. Certainly, since the mutiny began, not a man of them could ever have been sober. Foraging around, I found a bottle with some brandy left for Hands, and I, for myself, routed out some biscuit, pickled fruits, and a great bunch of raisins and a piece of cheese. With these I came on deck, put down my own stock behind the rudder head, and went out of the coxswain's reach, went forward to the water breaker, and had a good deep drink of water, and then, not till then, gave Hands the brandy. He must have drunk a gill before he took the bottle from his mouth. "Aye," he said, "by thunder, I wanted some of that." I had sat down already in my own corner and begun to eat. "Hurt much?" I asked him. He grunted, or I rather might say, he barked. If that doctor was aboard, he said, I'd be right enough to give him a couple of turns. But I don't have no manner of luck, you see, and that's what the matter with me. As for that swab, he's good and dead, he is, he added, and indicated the man with the red cap. He weren't no seaman anyhow, and where he might you come from? Well, said I, I've come aboard to take possession of this ship, Mr. Hands, and you'll please regard me as your captain until further notice. He looked at me sourly enough, but said nothing. Some of the color had come back into his cheeks, though he still looked very sick, and still continued to slip out and settle down as the ship banged about. Ah, by the by, I continued, I can't have these colors, Mr. Hands, and by your leave I'll strike them. Better none than these. And again, dodging the boom, I ran to the color lines, handed down their cursed black flag, and chucked it overboard. God save the king, said I, waving my cap, and there's an end to Captain Silver. He watched me keenly and slyly, his chin all the while on his breast. I reckon, he said at last, I reckon, Captain Hawkins, you'll want to get ashore now. Suppose we talks. Why, yes, said I, with all my heart, Mr. Hands, say on. And I went back to my meal with a good appetite. This man, he began, nodded feebling at the corpse. O'Brien were his name, a rank islander. This man and me got the canvas on her, meaning to sail her back. Well, he's dead now, he is, as dead as bilge, and who's to sail this ship, I don't see. Without I gives you a hint, you ain't that man, as far as I can tell. Now look here, you gives me food and drink and an old scarf or handkerchief to tie my wound up, you do, and I'll tell you how to sail her, and that's as square all round, I take it. I'll tell you one thing, says I, I'm not going back to Captain Kidd's anchorage. I meant to get north inland and beach her quietly there. To be sure you did, he cried. Why, I ain't such an infernal lubber as all that. I can see, can I? I've tried my fling, I have, and I lost, and you has the wind of me. North inlet? Why, I've no choice, not I. I'd help you sail her up to Execution Dock, by thunder, so I would. Well, as it seemed to me, there was some sense in this. We struck our bargain on the spot. In 3 minutes I had the Hispaniola sailing easily before the wind along the coast of Treasure Island, with good hopes of turning the northern point ere noon and beating down as far again as the north inlet before high water, when we might beach her safely and wait till the subsiding tide permitted us to land. Then I lashed the tiller and went below to my own chest, where I got a soft silk handkerchief of my mother's. With this, and with my aid, Hands bound up the great bleeding stab he had received in his thigh, and after he had eaten a little and had a swallow or two more of brandy, he began to pick up visibly, sat up straighter, spoke louder and clearer, and looked in every way another man. The breeze served us admirably. We skipped before it like a bird, the coast of the island flashing by and the view changing every minute. Soon we were past the high lands and bowling beside low, sandy country, sparsely dotted with dwarf pines, and soon we were back again and had turned the corner of the rocky hill that ends the island on the north. I was greatly elated with my new command and pleased with the bright, sunshiny weather and these different prospects of the coast. I now had plenty of water and good things to eat, and my conscience, which had smitten me hard for my desertion, was quieted by the great conquest I had made. I should, I think, have nothing left to me desire but for the eyes of the coxswain as they followed me derisively about the deck, and the odd smile that appeared continually on his face. It was a smile that hid in it something both of pain and weakness, a haggard old man's smile. But there was, beside that, a grain of derision, a shadow of treachery, in his expression as he craftily watched me at my work. This is the end of chapter 25. So, Israel Hands survived. The man in the red cap didn't. Both of them, well, he was injured. Israel Hands was injured, so Hawkins was able to take control of the boat. We may find out if it was a mistake not tying up Hands immediately or doing something else, because, he's alive and he may be treacherous and he may end up, taking the ship back from Hawkins, and you never know what's going to happen there. But Hawkins is running the ship, he's got some food, and things are going well. So We'll see what happens. I mean, this is exciting stuff. Oh, the Jolly Roger, name of the black pirate flag, typically portrayed with a skull and crossbones, but there were all sorts of different styles, and every pirate had his own, but typically the pirates flew black flags.